Well, I've been a writer all my life. I've been journaling since I was a kid, and a couple of years ago I published my first book. So podcasting wasn't that big of a transition for me. After I published my book, I was kind of struggling a little bit with the process of trying to get another book published, and I was feeling really frustrated by the fact that I had all of these stories, stories that were happening now, stories from back when I was a kid, and I really wanted to find a way to tell them. So one day, my guy and I are sitting out on the driveway. We're drinking and we're listening to the Bill Burr podcast. Now, Bill Burr is hands down my favorite comedian ever. I mean, he's hysterical. And I'm listening to him and he's telling these stories and I'm thinking, I can do this. If Bill Burr's got this great podcast, he was my inspiration. So I look at my guy and I say, let's give this a shot. He agreed and we got some gear together and just started podcasting. So here I am now. I love the name The Unwritable Rant. It's actually something that my guy came up with. We're sitting down and we were talking about what I wanted the show to be about. So although the show has evolved over time, the name The Unwritable Rant refers to all of the stories that I had. And these were the stories that I wouldn't put in print. So there you go. They're all unwritable, but they are definitely talkable. Well, The Unwritable Rant is essentially storytelling. It's two different kinds of stories. So the average episode is me telling my stories, things that have happened to me in my life, between me and my guy, the crazy adventures that we have when we go out, when we travel, when we meet people. It's fun, it's a little raunchy, it gets a little crazy sometimes. It's just life. But the other stories that I tell are other people's stories. So once a month or so, I invite a celebrity onto the show and we talk. I've had all sorts of people on that have just been fantastic. I talked to Rain Pryor, I talked to Mike Rowe, lots of comedians, Nick DiPaolo, Anthony Cumia, and even actors like Eric Roberts and even Ed Begley Jr. So it's been really cool because not only am I telling my stories, but I get to talk to these amazing people and hear, everything that happens to them and what's made their careers so special. It's kind of cool. Well, my guy and I have two very different roles when it comes to the podcast. Now me, I do everything that happens on the microphone. So I come up with the stories. Like I said, these are my life experiences. So as a writer, I put them together in a way that's going to be fun and kind of, entertaining and engaging. I also do all of the interview research. So every time I've got a guest coming on the show, I do hours upon hours of homework trying to figure out who they are and what makes them so interesting. Now my guy, David the producer, he is truly my producer. He makes the show sound amazing. He is probably the best editor on the planet. Beyond that, he also does all of the guest booking. So every time, somebody comes on the show, that's thanks to my guy. It's kind of cool having this really fun balance where we get to do this together, but we get to do the things that we're both really, really good at. Bourbon. I absolutely love bourbon. It's just such a delicious and fun thing to drink. It's something my guy and I actually got into on our travels. We'd been going in and out of Kentucky and into Nashville and New Orleans, and whenever we could, we would find a new distillery to stop at. So ultimately, me being a writer, I want to know more about everything. I dig in, I find out what I can, I do my homework, my research. So now it's like bourbon is my thing. So I start every show off with a toast. And I talk a little bit about the bourbon that I'm drinking because it's fun and it's interesting, and if I can help somebody find something new to drink, well, that's a bonus. Besides, when you're telling stories, there's nothing better than just hanging out with friends over cocktails. So that's why I always invite people to share their recommendations with me, because I want to know what they like too. What do they recommend? What might I like? Because the problem that I'm finding in doing a new show every week, I'm kind of running out of options. I start going to the liquor store now and I'm like, all right, had that one. So having people give me suggestions really kind of broadens my horizons a little bit. Well, I think having these guests on the show really adds kind of a cool new dimension to it. You get a chance to hear somebody talking to a person that maybe you're not necessarily familiar with, or somebody that you've heard a ton about, but get to hear them talk in a more casual setting. This isn't like CNN, it's not NPR. I'm just a regular chick, I'm sitting there with my bourbon and I'm having these cool conversations with people and really getting them to open up. One of my favorite experiences was talking to Chuck Negron, who is the singer of Three Dog Night. He was a little hesitant at first, but then once we got talking and I got him comfortable, all of a sudden he starts telling me stuff that nobody's heard before. Like the cool inside stuff from the band, why they broke up and his relationship with the other members. And that's why I love doing these calls, these conversations with people, because I get to learn more about them too. People that I admire, I get to hear stuff that I would normally never get to hear from them. But there are so many people that I would love to have on the show. I think my biggest goal is to get Bill Burr on. He was the one that started all of this for me. He was, my favorite comedian, and the opportunity to talk to him would just be tremendous. It would be amazing. I think there are two women that have really been an inspiration to me, just personally and in my career. That would be Katharine Hepburn and Dorothy Parker. Now, Katharine Hepburn is a tremendous actress, but what I loved about her was that she took on different roles that gave her a very strong character, a strong voice. It wasn't the classic leading lady type stuff that you were seeing back then. And she was just stunning. Just a truly inspiring, cool woman that I wish I could have had an opportunity to talk to. Now, the other would be Dorothy Parker. And if you don't know who she is, I recommend looking her up immediately. She was a writer in the 20s and 30s. Just a dirty, awesome writer who brought out things that people weren't saying, particularly women, because at the time, women had much more of a subdued voice, a little bit more quiet, more reserved. But Dorothy Parker went out there and she just kicked ass. She was part of the Algonquin Roundtable, which was this collection of writers and artists who would get together in New York and they would just tear apart society. They came up with these biting criticisms of what was going on at the time that were just, it's brilliant. So Dorothy Parker especially is just an awesome lady. To anybody who is looking to get started in podcasting, the biggest thing I can recommend doing first is your homework. There are tons of podcasts out there and you want to make sure that you sound different. So research it, find out what goes into podcasting, because it's not as easy as you think. And that was the biggest mistake I made, was thinking I could just sit down with my computer and talk into the microphone. But there's more to it than that. There's gear that's required. There's web hosting that's required. You really need to figure out everything that goes into it before you get started. That way you know what you're in for. There's a lot of work. You've got to have something special. Because if you look at all the podcasts out there, you want to make sure you're going to stand out from the rest of them. So listen to every podcast you can. Find out what they do that you like. Find out what they do that you don't like. And then be different. Find an angle, find something that makes you special, and then be as good at it as you possibly can. Because podcasting is not for the lazy. This is work, and you really need to stand out from everybody else. The thing that I love most about podcasting is the fact that every episode is a challenge. I want to be better than I was on my last episode every single time. So coming up, there's a lot of stuff that we've got going on. I'm working on new stories. I'm building new characters to incorporate into the podcast. Stuff that's going to make it more fun and more engaging for everybody. Beyond that, we've got some great interviews planned. We're working with some very cool people to have them on the podcast. And also, I've got some really cool side projects coming out. I'm involved in a comic book. It's called Kindred Homecomings. And I am the sheriff in this comic book. It's crazy. It's available through Snug Comics, and it's kind of a retelling of an 80s horror movie with some new twists and turns to it. So I'm excited about that. We're talking about new ways to tell my stories. So I'm going to be doing some more videos coming up and all sorts of great stuff. You know, this is fun. It's kind of cool to experiment and see what works. Oh, definitely bourbon. Absolutely bourbon. But if you want to know my favorite kind of bourbon, that would be Town Branch. Definitely creating, because I'm an active kind of person. I want to be involved in it. You know, I like having my fingers in things like that. So absolutely creating. Neither, actually. It would be Lou Malnati's. The crust on Lou Malnati's deep dish pizza is just spectacular. The Unwritable Rant is a blast. It is the most creative and fun thing I have done probably in a really, really long time. I love it.